We talk about targets and getting clear on it, but I like how you said pick a target early on in your full swing and with short game and putting. Why is it so important to pick that early on? Because you kind of referenced it to an example of like painting on the wall. I thought that was really, really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and probably one of the key points in this new book, Your Brain Swings Every Club. Okay, so our retina, people think that the images that come through our eyes, these photons that are coming through our eyes, our pupil, they go to the retina, and that's the final destination. Our retina is not the final destination. It's the interim destination. It's just a screen where an image first lands. But your brain has to make sense of what it is seeing. And so there's an optic nerve that goes from your eye to the back of your brain to your visual cortex. And there are many screens there. So that's the real screen where the image is then made sense of. Now, just to make things simple, let's call that screen the V1 screen. Okay. Now, we distract ourselves roughly every 3 to 5 seconds. That's point number one.
Mm-hmm.
Point number two is our eyes are moving 3 times per 1 second. And point number three is that we roughly have about 250 degrees of view in front of our eyes. That means the span of what we can see. So imagine your eyes are moving 3 times per second. And by the way, we're designed to do that because it's how we protect ourselves. It's how we recognize danger. So that's the factory setting of the brain. So number one, you're distracting yourself every 3 seconds. Your eyes are moving 3 times per second. That basically means that what is the final image in your V1 cortex is changing. So early target selection, and this research has been done by dozens of neuroscientists in other sports, that the earlier that you pick a target and then you reinforce that target. So the first time that you pick the target early, think of that as the first coat of paint if you're painting the wall in your living room. We all know that the first coat of paint is kind of the light one, right? Then you put another coat, then it gets thick. Then you put another coat, and then boom, now it's really shining. And now like the color is really, the richness of the color stands out. So the earlier that you pick a target, I'm going to start it off that tree and cut it off that. I'm going to hit it, my putt over that blade of grass. The earlier in the process that you pick a target, the more opportunity you have to put more coats of paint so that when you finally move your head back down at the ball, you don't lose the target.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So early target selection allows the brain to put more coats of paint. And in a sport where you have to recall the target because your eyes are not on it, early target selection is key. Conversely, the closer to your backstroke that you pick a target, the lower the coat of paint is, the higher the probability that you're going to lose it, unless the target just happened to be amazing, unless there's this big patch of grass and it's got a color contrast and a shape contrast. If you're lucky enough to get a target like that, then yeah, you can pick it anytime you want to. But golf is played over 500 acres. Every shot you hit is going to have a different target depending on the time of the day, the sunshine, the cloudy, fall season, spring season. We're moving. So target selection, and there's a whole chapter in my book about, a lot of times people pick a target, and I debunk this myth about small target, small miss. Small target, small myth there's no research that can prove that, but it sounds sexy, right? Small target, small miss.
Yep.
But small target also means that you can lose it. A small
Mm.
target from 300 yards away, you will lose it. Now, the better way of saying that is a contrasting target, the smaller the miss. Now, that doesn't sound sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a contrast means that it stands out. There's something about what you're looking at that makes it stand out. It's a brown branch over a green tree.
Mm.
So it's a dead branch, so the brown and the gray of the branch against a backdrop of a green tree, that's a contrast. You will remember that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's whatever stands out, whatever has a contrasting enough, shape, color, size kind of a thing out there or on the putting green, those are the targets that your brain is likely to remember.
Yeah, that one was the first thing I had written down here too, was to find contrast, because like some courses just seem to set up better for target selection than others. And so for me, I find myself, really trying to always get clear on the target, and like you said, doing it early, but like I think that's one thing I'm going to try and do is obviously get it like really really early on so that way we can get multiple coats of paint. But it is like you said, it's the contrast. And it's not easy to do sometimes on some courses like if they're really good. Like I just got a chance to US Open qualify at the Estancia Club. There isn't a blade of grass that's out, right? It's like so good. So let's go over how to actually pick targets for approach shots or for tee shots, approach shots, and putting because I think that is good. So I'm kind of with you. I'm not a big fan of the aim small, miss small. I actually like to pick like zones. So I like to find like a tree and another tree or a cactus and another cactus to give me like a little zone when I'm hitting driver. That seems like for me to work the best. So that's what I do off the tee. Into the green, it's not always easy though for that. So like, what would you recommend for maybe approach shots and then putting too? Is it the blade of grass? Is it a divot? Like, what are some things that people can instantly start kind of thinking about with targets?
Sure, sure. And just so you know, I work with lots of tour guys, and the guys have early morning tee times, like they're the first group or two out, they
Mm-hmm.
have the same problem, because the surfaces are so smooth on the greens, it's hard to find targets.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain holes and certain shots where targets are not available. Okay, tee to green, I like targets that are above the ground.
Okay.
Okay, because it somehow matches the trajectory of the shot that you're about to hit. So
Mm-hmm.
if you and I were live, let's say that you and I were in the same room across the table, and I had a little tennis ball in my hand, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And I take the tennis ball and I throw it low, right? And your hands are low, like they're by your knees, and I throw it there, right? And my hands will naturally throw the tennis ball to where your hands are.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that my release is really not there. Now, if you took your hands and put it above your head and say, okay, throw it there, just looking at your hands above there, my hands is going to just release
Mm.
higher
Okay.
without even thinking about it. You don't have to tell me, hey, make sure that you release your hands higher so that the ball goes over there. So I like tee to green, the targets to be above the ground. So if you're on a tee box, a bunker in the fairway is a target, but it's not the best target.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, on and around the greens, I like targets on the ground because if you're chipping, pitching, you're going to land the ball here. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you're putting, you're going to roll the ball over a certain spot, maybe a blade of grass, maybe an old pitch mark, all those kinds of things. So one rule of thumb is tee to green. I like targets above the ground because they match the neuromuscular movement or sequencing that you want for that shot. Tee to green, I mean, you have a driver or a 3-wood or a long iron in your hand, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be a full swing. Your hands are gonna finish way up here, right? So picking a target up there that matches the general flight, the
Okay.
trajectory, or even the shape are better,
That
right?
makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of people just say, "Oh, I'm going to hit the right side of the fairway or I'm going to, carve it off this bunker." And those are all on the ground. And so it's
Correct.
probably not as conducive. It sounds like you're saying. So save that for the short game. So with the putting specifically, because there's a lot of really good stuff with putting in here. I mean, honestly, this is like a putting masterclass. That's like a big one for me. It's like you're saying to pick something there. So maybe an old pitch mark, a blade of grass, the way the grain is by the cup. Do you like the target like in right in front of the ball? Is it the apex or is it the cup or a little bit of everything?
No, no, no. So that's another good question. So let me answer that question by correlating it to other sports. I've been very lucky enough to work with quarterbacks. I've been very lucky enough to work with baseball pitchers. I've been very lucky enough to work with so many other athletes where they're throwing something, usually a ball, but not always a ball, to
Mm-hmm.
a target. And in every successful attempt, meaning you've hit the bullseye of whatever the target is, they almost always have the final destination as the target.
Okay.
If a basketball player is shooting, they're not thinking what the ball is doing from their hand to the apex. They're looking at a certain spot on the rim with which where the ball goes to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I am generally not a fan of picking a target close to the ball. I am a fan of picking a target close to the hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So especially short putts. Now,
Yeah.
long lag putts, depending on all the drama and the distance and the
Yeah.
ridges that you have to go through, lag putting is a different beast. But on putts, let's say 12 feet and in, I want you guys to pick a target in the last third.
Okay.
And you'll be amazed that if that's the target that you're holding, you will naturally apply the right amount of force because those targets are activating New York City. They're
Mm.
activating your grid neuron. And remember, it is the final destination that creates scale from here to there. That scale is what creates force, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe putting is hard. Now, some of your listeners are going to want to throw something at me, like, how dare he say something like this? But just, I mean, Mike, just think about this. Like,
Yeah.
I work with so many athletes whose equipment is far more complex. First of all, you're on a smooth surface. You have a short piece of equipment. This putter has barely any loft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is quiet, right? So the hardest thing is when you look back down at the ball after that last look, are you able to activate that grid neuron? Are you able to activate that final destination?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most people, even at the highest levels, when they're over a putt, they're thinking, okay, go this far back, or make sure you release the putter. I mean, these thoughts are not, save them for your practice putting range, but when you're out there playing on the course,
Mm-hmm.
you want to have no thoughts except, okay, that's where I want the ball to enter the cup. Now, sometimes you're lucky enough to find something. There's an old blade of grass, or there's
Mm-hmm.
something. Sometimes it's the back of the cup. Sometimes it's the color contrast between the white lining and the little brown mud or gray mud surface there. But the process of searching and finding the best target is in itself a neurohack. If you're
Mm.
looking with your eyes, okay, what can I see? What can I see? Where do you think your brain is? It's here right now in this moment.
Yeah. So you're not worried about, am I going to miss this? Don't three putt this. This
Yeah,
is for the win.
yeah.
Ah, yeah.
So I try to teach my caddies and golfers at every level, like, enjoy the process. That is in
Mm-hmm.
fact the test.